and being able to focus inward. And he would expose himself to the cold to help him train how to breathe and how to redirect his blood to the right areas. And I'm finding, and now there's like a bulk of literature all of a sudden about cold adaptation training. And people, of course, lose more body fat. Their metabolism is obviously elevated. Most PRs, yeah. Most PRs occur in the cold. So I thought that was interesting. And I wonder too, like with these habits, what are people willing to try and what are they not willing to try? And my question to you is like, with the upcoming new year, like what are some things that are just like super uncomfortable, and you're like, you've been hearing about it for a while and you're like, it sounds really cool. What are some things that are uncomfortable that you'd like to implement? Like now, not even like waiting till midnight, but like starting now.
Now I haven't even thought about that, but it's funny you brought up the cold showers because I literally was in a hot shower for like a half hour about 8 hours ago. But I've been thinking about it because I just finished another certification, and one of them is on like recovery. One section of it is on like recovery and regeneration and like cold hot contrast or just the cold. And I had listened to your podcast a couple weeks ago. I think the last one you talked about cold showers. And I was just like, God, I'm just not there yet. Just especially, I mean, I don't know how it's been here, but in California, our mornings and at like 4:30 in the morning, it's like 30 degrees. And I'm like, the last thing I want to do is jump in a cold shower. I really don't even want to get out of my hot bed right now. So yeah, the cold shower has been something on my mind to train myself towards, we'll say. Yeah. I definitely think just like exercise is something that's going to take training for sure, and slow progression and decreasing that temperature, maybe turning down the water heater slightly so I don't know that I'm actually turning it down, or I can't turn it up as high. Definitely like my hot showers, but know the benefit of the cold ones. So, but now, man, that's tough. I mean, actually, speaking of, one of the things that I was like, so I just got in that little fender bender right before I came over here. And like normally, like I'm just like, you know what? It's New Year's Eve. I can get all pissed off about it. It's a rental car. I'm worried about that. I don't know how it's going to work out. I'm pretty sure I wasn't the one at fault, but you never know how it's going to play out, with insurance and whatnot. I tried to do my part. I was really nice to the lady, and I was like, you know what? I'm just going to breathe. I'm going to let it go by. There's absolutely nothing I can do about it at this point. Put my statement into my insurance, send them the pictures, and literally why stress about it, because their decision is going to be what it is no matter how much I stress. So, I mean, I think that's one thing, too. I do have a lot of stress right now trying to wrap up a job there, trying to move halfway across the country again within 6 months, pack stuff up, start jobs over here in contacts. And you know what? One of the biggest things that I thought about when I was driving over after the accident is, just got to let things go. Got to breathe, like you emphasize a lot. And just only, worry about what's actually in your direct control at that time. If you can't change it now, and it's out of your control, and it's something that's not gonna, that might harm you if you keep like stressing about it, then just kind of let it go for the time being.
Yeah. I think letting go is an act in itself. Yeah. Right. Yeah. Letting go. I mean, actually, like in the cold shower, I'll say this from my experience. Like for me, I have to let go of like the desire to like freak out, right? Because the moment I do that, I've already lost. My traps have taken over. There's no access here at all. There's no access to the deep core fibers at all. You have to almost, at least for me, I have to almost take my mind completely somewhere else, and I have to. It's almost like I'm in my body, but I don't pay attention to the external stimulus as much. The stimulus of the cold water hitting my skin, and I'm like, holy shit, this is cold. It's just more like water's hitting my skin, cool. Breathe. Like that's the first step, like acknowledge, number one. Okay, number two, the shit's cold, breathe. And then this is like the thoughts, really, it's crazy. 3, breathe. And then 4, at this point, it's like, okay, I'm doing okay. And then all of a sudden, I come out of that meditative state. I'm like, oh shit, this stuff is cold again. I have to go back to the same cycle. Number 1 is cold. Number 2, okay. I acknowledge that it's cold. It's fine. Breathe. And I go through the same thought process over and over. And before you know it, it's been like 10, 15 minutes. And when I wait that long and then I get out of the shower, it's a very interesting like adaptive process that happens. Like eyes wide open, skin's tighter, And if you deal with sinus problems, all that stuff comes out, which I thought was fascinating.
Do you do all cold showers?
Now I do.
You do?
So now I do all cold, and yeah, it saves a lot of money. But now I do all cold, and typically I'll go like 5 times a week, and the rest of the time I'll go like warm cold, because I kind of like the warm cold has benefits too. Yeah, because you're kind of moving blood back and forth between your viscera and your skin, and it's like a massage almost. But I the only reason why I do it now straight is because I actually, believe it or not, enjoy it. I enjoy it. It's weird because the thing I used to despise and hate, it's like no freaking way I'm going to do a cold shower, is something I truly enjoy. Not just because it makes me feel good after, because that's like, of course, everyone wants that. But it's the character again. I'm a big fan of the whole character building thing. Like I've lost, for a while I was big into powerlifting, and I still am. I love powerlifting. And I just wanted the PR. I got to like 450 on deadlift. I got to like 405 on squat, and I was just like, yeah, I want to keep going. Let's get to 500. Why not? And at the expense of sometimes like missing out some movement mastery cues. Like I'll do a front squat at 245, but my elbows are starting to drop by the third rep, and I'll just like muscle through. And I so enjoyed seeing the numbers go up that I forgot about how much more difficult it would actually be to dial in the form even more perfect, and how much more benefit I would get. And I just started to fall in love with mastery. And there's a guy named, have you heard of Ido Portal? Mm-hmm. Okay, so he's big into the movement mastery and all that stuff. And all the students say something that I've believed for a long time, and it's only come to really pass for me like recently. And that is like the fun of it to me is like being in it sounds cliche, but being in the process and enjoying that, because you learn so much. And where I'm going with this is that how do you get a client to get there, to that point of falling in love with moving rather than falling in love with just getting it out of the way?
That's a good one. I think a lot of it is, I mentioned this earlier, but showing them success every time you're with them. Or at least, even if it doesn't seem like success, even if celebrate it, find a way to frame it as success. Even or point out the struggle that they used to have. And where they've come from. But I think, and that's big in precision nutrition stuff, is always finding something little that they can feel they were successful at, because we don't like to struggle. Some of us maybe as athletes do. We kind of do mastering stuff. And sometimes the struggle is enjoyable for some of us who grew up as athletes, but I think in general most humans don't like to struggle or don't like to show the struggle. So if you can somehow disguise that struggle as success, and then somehow point out the journey after, like where have they come to where they're now, will help keep them motivated in some way, to keep going. And sometimes half the battle is just showing up. So a lot of times they'll come in and they're like, I had one guy come in, he's a professor for Stanford Medical School, the other day, and we met at 6:00 at night. He had a long work day. I always come in, I'm like, hey Stanley, how's your day? How's it going? He's just like, oh, well, I'm here. Let's go. I was like, okay. Let's do it. And so then by the end of it, I can he's usually pretty friendly, pretty nice, but every once in a while, it's a pretty stressful job. He's freaking 82 too. And he's been teaching at Stanford for 53 years. Insane. And he shows up, and I was like, you know what, Stanley, you did awesome today. You weren't, he wasn't feeling it for whatever reason. I didn't get into it. I didn't want to push his buttons. He obviously wasn't in a good mood on that part. But by the end of it, I got him to smile, and I was like, Stanley, you know what? You just did really well. And he'll smile and walk out. And sometimes just showing him that, or maybe being the light at the end of that stressful day, or, being that ear for them to listen to and bitch to you about, even in the midst of the workout, getting that out will kind of help them keep wanting to go.
Yeah, I like that. That's a good place to actually end, I think. Man, yeah. I think celebrating everything. And that's something that actually one of my friends, Josh and Steph, if you're listening to this, guys, what's up? They've kind of pushed me to see it this way too. Like, celebrate every little victory, even as a coach. Like, so for example, if you like, for example, you just move, or you didn't move yet, but you've come down to Austin, you're talking to me, you're hanging out, you're doing your first podcast ever, right? That's a victory in itself. Like, that's huge, like, and for me, it's very hard for me to sometimes just like get into that mode of celebrating every victory for myself. For my clients, it's easy. I'm like, dude, yeah. And I'm just like, next thing. No, not good enough. Next. It's like this, it's like robotic thing. And so anyway, I think that was awesome, that what you said, and it's a great way to kind of end the podcast and move into like the new year. It's like, celebrate every little victory. And I think it's becoming more of mass consciousness for coaches now. Like, this is starting to celebrate the victories versus being very, very hard on clients and saying you're not there yet. They're starting to help people progress slowly but surely. And yeah, I definitely want to thank Erin for being on the podcast. Thank you so much for coming here and talking to me, and coming for the second time, coming and hanging out and agreeing to do a podcast. People are afraid of speaking on big platforms, and same thing with myself. Every time I do a podcast, I'm actually pretty nervous. So I just do it. I show up and start talking, and it ends up being a fun conversation. So I had a good time. Hopefully you had a good time too.
Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. Erin, if they wanted to learn more about you, if they wanted to connect with you, if they wanted to learn more about what you talk about and offer, where can they find you?
The biggest place is to look me up on Facebook, Erin Laverone. It's Lav as in Victor, Erone. I do have a website. It has unfortunately not been updated in about 6 months, but it's enlfitpro.weebly.com. And so hopefully once I get here, I'll be able to put more content up on that. It's been on the back burner, though, since I've been attempting the full-time grind in California. But once we get back here, we get more of the private stuff going and working with Sumer and PN and back with UT again. Hopefully we'll get more content up there. But otherwise, my Facebook page right now is probably where I post most of my stuff.
Awesome. So be sure you check her out on Facebook, guys. Connect with her. I've learned so much just from an hour of interviewing her. And that's really why I do this stuff, is to learn from everyone and grab little pieces, bits and pieces of how they live their life, so that I can hopefully be resourceful for you as well. So Happy New Year, everyone. And let's not wait till some magical resolution to begin our habits. Let's do it now. Let's actually commit right now in this moment. Much love, peace, well-being, people.